Hi, everyone. It's me, Sarah, your Christian forgiveness coach, and you are listening to Forgive Everyone for Everything Every Day Right Away, episode number 38, Forgiveness and Honor. I chose the subject title of honor for this episode from the verse about honoring your mother and father from scripture. So it's mentioned all over the Bible, and because I want to show you one way that it ties in with forgiveness. So, first, let's talk about what scripture means when it says honor your mother and father. Well, it means just that, honor them, respect them as children, do not disobey them, do not talk back to them, do not lie to them, steal from them, gossip about them, respect the home, the money, the car, the school they send you to, et cetera, et cetera. So, now notice what else scripture says about honoring your mother and father. As a child, it says, children, honor your mother and father so that things will go well for you. So that sounds familiar, right? Obey God and things will go well for you. Do not, and we suffer, right? So, what happens as children, if we do not obey our parents, life can get hard, right? We haven't learned how to forgive. We haven't learned about healthy boundaries. We don't have the knowledge of scripture yet, and we haven't applied it to our lives because our parents maybe didn't teach us. And then we end up married years down the road. And guess what can sometimes happen? And here's something I was never told much about and didn't understand when I was married is that our spouses have now taken the place of our parents, and we can get triggered by some of the same things that we didn't honor or didn't forgive when we were kids. And we may end up reliving these things as adults in our adult relationships. So, one way to think about this is, have you ever noticed that you are sometimes triggered by something that your partner says or does? And it doesn't even have to be your spouse, it can be your boss, or any other adult in your life. And it can even be like a look or a mannerism, and it triggers you in a negative way. And you and they haven't actually done anything wrong, so to speak, but you're triggered by it and you get upset by it. And maybe you don't really understand why. A lot of times it's because we maybe have something in our past, and typically it has to do with our parents or whatever primary caregiver adult that we had as kids, because that's who we were closest to at the time. And so like think back, like first experiences, right? So these words now, this action, this look, or this mannerism now, it's something someone else did in your past that you've recorded as a child. And that record in your brain has created a pathway that leads you to feel a negative emotion because back then it was a negative experience. So maybe it was your mom yelling at you, or your dad did or said something that hurt you, or your mom always gave you like this look that made you feel insignificant, something like that. Now, fast forward to adulthood, your partner or boss or whoever is saying or doing things that remind you of a parent or other adult from your childhood, and you might get triggered. And then you feel that negative emotion. But the crazy thing is, in the present, in the adult present, we think it's because of our partner or boss or whoever. And so sometimes we need to go back to the root. We need to go look at where that came from. You know, how scripture says every fruit has a root. So maybe our parents didn't even necessarily do anything quote unquote wrong, but it was something like, they never let you have a sleepover with your friends, and, it made you mad, or they were super strict, or in my case, the opposite, not strict at all, with like no boundaries, no consequences, nothing. And the seemingly little things that shaped us and had an impact on us, they follow us into adulthood, and they come up in our closest, most intimate relationships as triggers. And we sometimes have to go back and find that root or that origin and forgive it or ask for forgiveness for it. So, a couple of my own examples, like I had to go back and forgive my mom for, she would often get me a pet like a dog or a cat, and then later return it to the shelter for whatever reason. And this was devastating to me as a kid. And I remember now, like I made a pact to myself back then that if I had a pet, I would never give it up. which is why at one point I had 13 dogs, but that's another story. So I also had to go back and forgive her for like what I would describe as giving me too much freedom and alone time as a kid. She had to work. We're just her and I, single mom. So I basically took care of myself from elementary school on. I fed myself, I got myself to the bus stop, I got myself home, etc. And this eventually led to like hanging out with friends and other kids, maybe doing stuff kids really shouldn't be doing. And I had to forgive her for that. And also for not really teaching me about healthy relationships. Like she struggled a lot in her own personal relationships, and I witnessed that. And we never talked about it. And I certainly was never taught, nor did I know how to forgive. And so I grew up struggling a lot with the same relationship issues that my mom did. So we may need to ask for forgiveness in a certain area also where we didn't obey our parents. So maybe notice, maybe in your adult life now, is there a certain area that like you really struggle in? Maybe it's finances, for example. Maybe there's something you need to forgive your parents for something in that area, or maybe you disobeyed them for something in that area and it needs to be forgiven and released so you can start being blessed in that area. So going back and discovering what beliefs you're holding on to about something like money can really help release that. And this kind of makes me think about my own children, right? Like, what am I teaching my kids about forgiveness so they can grow up knowing what true forgiveness is and how to implement it in their lives so that they will suffer less? Don't get me wrong. I know my kids are going to suffer. They're going to struggle. Life's going to happen to them. Pain is going to occur. Nobody escapes that. And I know I'm going to mess up as a parent, certainly have, will continue to do so. And they'll grow up getting triggered in their adult lives as well. But they don't have to suffer unnecessarily if they know how to forgive and bless and they learn how to do that as a daily practice. So, how can we better honor God and ourselves and the people we're in relationships with? And a question I often ask myself is, what would love do? So if someone does something I don't like, how would love respond? How can I love myself in that moment? Or, you know, perhaps frustration or judgment of someone else? How do I want to show up in spite of my opinions and my emotions? And I know for me, honoring God, myself, and others is really learning how to do this thing of forgiving everyone for everything every day right away. Trying to do that, trying to implement that as a lifestyle brings up all of our stuff. So it's like all the ways I find I need to grow and be more like Jesus. So I hope you find this concept useful and it creates some awareness for you around some of your triggers and you can find some freedom from them. Until next time, bye.